So, Ian, would we be expecting yours to be the internet that might crash during the recording?
We'll be ready for it.
Yeah, I'd say it's highly likely.
Okay.
If I'm honest.
I'm not entirely sure that.
I just spoke to the Orange helpline, and I don't know if you expect different things in French. Maybe my expectations are different, but it was simply just éteindre et redémarrer, which is turn it off and turn it on again.
Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts. I'm Kev F Sutherland, and my guests today are Margaret Cabourn Smith and Ian Moore.
Hello.
Ta-da! Hello. Delighted to be here.
And this is your favourite podcast about comics. Don't worry if you don't know or care anything about comics. Half the time, neither do my guests, and it doesn't hurt. My two guests have brought with them a panel from a comic or something close, and we're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it. Maybe we'll learn something about comics and our guests, or maybe we'll just show off a bit and have a fun chat. Let us see. Now, we have variously worked together in the past. In different roles. We have shared the stage or gone on one before the other. Ian, it was neither today nor yesterday when you were busy being a stand-up.
That's right. I mean, I still do corporate stuff, but I'd stopped doing circuit stand-up about 6 years ago.
And this was when
writing.
The writing started.
Yeah, well, I started. I'd finished my first crime book just before lockdown, and it came out in 2021, and I've written 10 books since then. So it's just, kind of full on doing that, which is nice because I don't have to travel. And I was getting pretty tired of traveling back from the Loire Valley to wherever every weekend, which I had done for 15 years.
In a moment, we'll find out why on earth you're in the Loire Valley rather than the places where clearly people want you to be all the rest of the time. Margaret, you and I
haven't lived in the Loire Valley ever.
Haven't lived in the Loire Valley at all. We were sharing theatres at the time that you were working with Miranda.
Yes.
Which led to the telly.
Yeah.
Well,
we're very much responsible for her career, I'd say.
I'd take all credit.
The two of us. Yeah.
We know you from Miranda, lots of work on Miranda, and from Motherland, and from John Finnemore's Souvenir podcast. So the only question we have to ask is, which is best?
What, radio or TV or?
No, I actually wanted you to compare two of our favourite comedy writers and set them head to head.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see that fight going very well. Like, I'm not sure either of them are particularly well equipped for that. They're both very, very English and polite. So I think we'll just leave saying that I love them both. So.
Do you know what? I think English and polite really does characterise probably the pair of you, because Margaret, your podcast, which we all know crushed, deals with, well, it probes into people's delicate parts because they
really does.
They talk about their crushes and their unrequited loves. Do people find it fairly easy to open up?
It's not polite at all. It's absolutely probing. Yeah. Do you know, it's really interesting. It feels like there's two types of people, particularly in comedy. The people who are desperate to go and talk about their history of unrequited love and get it all off their chest. And the people who are, a friend of mine just said, I would die of shame if I had to tell you who I fancied. And I was like, you know what? Everybody fancies people. And she was like, no, not me. And I spoke to Lee Mack, who also said, oh, I would just deny everything.
Well, yeah,
I think that's the way to go.
Well, it's not an English thing, is it? Therapy.
But it's not therapy. It's pure judgment.
Yeah, which I'm all in favour. I'm in favour of both, actually. In fact, judgmental therapy, I think, is one of my favourite things to do.
Well, that is the podcast. That's very much my dream.
It's funny talking about crushes, though, because I was on Facebook this morning and I saw a poster for the Talking Pictures weekend, which is Talking Pictures is like a nostalgia TV channel. And I saw that Andre Vincent, who we all know, was on there. He was on the poster. But so was Lisa Goddard. Lisa Goddard, fantastic comedy actress, who was probably my first crush.
No way!
As a 7-8-year-old. So it was like all worlds collided.
Was she, she used to do I mean, this is sort of related. Didn't she used to do the drawing
She
when
did
they
give
had
us a
sort of
clue,
Pictionary.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
she did give us a clue, but I can't remember what it was.
She was in a
But it was
sitcom called
it was a
No
sitcom.
Honestly.
Right.
Oh.
No,
Okay.
honestly. You know it was
I
meant
don't
to
remember
be.
that
That was
bit.
Is this
Oh,
turning you on, Ian?
Lindsay
I was so
DePaul's theme tune.
blinded by her beauty, I must have missed the soundtrack.
Now, would I be right to say that Lisa Goddard was briefly married to Colin Baker, who was a Doctor Who? Or am I
No,
dreaming that?
I think you might.
That
Well,
seems
he had a
unlikely.
type, if so, because wasn't he
Did he?
married to the woman from, put the dinner on, I'll be home in 20 minutes, who was sort of an American version of Lisa Goddard.
No,
Please know who I'm talking
that
about.
was
Oh,
Peter
Sandra, that was Peter
Davison
Peter
Davison.
and
Davis.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that
Sandra
was
see.
Disco.
Is that not who?
Sandra. Yes,
Lisa
that was
Goddard,
Sandra.
who I think
Sandra.
I may have, who is Louise Elizabeth Goddard, was married to Colin Baker. Holds up phone to screen
Wow,
to
amazing.
validate his memory.
Man
All right,
alive.
I accept
Man
it.
alive. Well,
This is the
that's kind of ruined
nerdiest
it.
collection of references I've ever heard.
I always like to open with material that's never going to make it into the edit. And frankly, remembering who Lisa Goddard was married to, it's not high on the list of things that we're supposed to cover. But the word cozy comes to mind not only when I'm misdescribing Crushed, but also when we're talking about your genre of crime writing. I mean, is your crime writing cozy? The fact that you mentioned croissants in your first novel title makes everybody think it's going to be fairly, at least chummy.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not the thing about cozy crime. Whether you like that kind of label or not, it's stuck. It's there, and basically what it is that you get none of the. I did a lecture on this in French at a French literary festival thing, and I basically said, look, these are the rules of cozy crime. There's no blood, there's no detailed forensics. Everything sort of happens off screen. That is like that. It's quite gossipy. It's amateur detectives. It's generally a rural setting, and all the French audience are kind of looking at me, going, "Oh yeah, 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 whatever." And then I said, oh, also, there's no sex, and they just went, "Ah, right, so it's English." So that is basically what cozy crime does. I wouldn't say crime is particularly cozy, but in the setting that I put them in, particularly the cozy crime series that I write, then I guess it is because it's set around a bed and breakfast in rural France. So that's so that you get an influx of characters that are changing constantly.
I must admit, I don't know much about French crime writing. We get a lot of Scandinavians imported, and anybody who automatically speaks English. I've heard of Maigret and I've heard of Lupin because there was a TV adaptation, but Lupin's like
Arsène
100 years
Lupin,
ago, isn't it?
yeah. Well, yeah, Arsène Lupin was, I'm trying to remember the name of the writer now, it's going to annoy me, but he was a contemporary of Conan Doyle,
Right.
and he wrote a book called Arsène Lupin versus Sherlock Holmes. And obviously the English publishers went, hey, hang on, you cannot just take the name Sherlock Holmes and do it like that. So he changed it, and the book was actually called in the end Arsène Lupin against Herlock Sholmes, which was
That'll do it.
a
That's
massive,
absolutely
massive
fine.
about face.
No
Yeah.
one will.
So
No one will guess.
no, no way. Who is this guy? So there is a lot of French crime writing, but it doesn't tend to get translated. I mean, my favorite French writer, or one of my favorite crime writers, full stop, is a lady called Fred Varga, who's actually an archaeologist by trade, and her books are absolutely magnificent, but they stopped being translated about 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm kind of left to pick out the nuances with my weaker French in the original text.
Was your
It may be
French
losing something.
was your French that good before you moved to France?
Oh
What
no.
is the poulet and earth situation there?
Well, it is what I did some gigs in French when I decided I really needed to kick on. So that was quite terrifying because I've got, and I say at the start of every gig I do in French, you can either have the words or the accent, but there's no chance you're getting both at the same time. And that's basically how it is. So I do this kind of Frockney, which is my French accent. But when Brexit happened and I had to apply for French nationality, I had to kick on in the language. I had to properly kick on and pass a language test before I could go any further in the citizenship process.
Wow.
So it's pretty good now.
How's
My
your
wife
French,
says I'm
Margaret?
fluent.
Listen, I got an A at GCSE, and this was before there were A stars. So,
Well
if you
done.
want to know the way to the swimming pool, I'm your girl. I'd love to know more, but no, I don't have to pass the citizen test. So,
Of course, the French are the people who gave us the language of love, and I like to think I was there when you and your husband got together. Margaret and Dan sort of became a couple during the Edinburgh Fringe one year, wasn't it?
yes, 2002.
When we all took our shows up there, and then you
Yeah.
just brought one back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cost cutting.
Exactly. It just made sense. God, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
economies of scale, it's called.
And you would have done the Fringe back in the day, Ian.
No, never did. Never did it. I hated it. I did like a showcase thing in '99, an off the curb showcase thing with 20 minutes each between, so an hour between three acts. There's me, Caroline Quinlan, and Catherine Tate did that year. And I hated the whole experience of Edinburgh so much that I vowed never to go back. Um,
Wow.
I'm loving the
but
Venn
never say
diagrams.
never.
The Venn
Never
diagrams.
say never.
This is
Never say
drawing
never.
big Venn diagrams in the mind because, of course, you were on with Carrie Quinlan. Carrie Quinlan was then with Margaret in the John Finnemore souvenir program.
Yes.
Does that program
And
continue?
they were a couple for a while.
Oh, I did not know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does continue. They now, he's too busy to do a whole series a year,
Mhm.
so we do one special every year. And we've resolved to do that until one of us dies. And I mean, and if it's John, we definitely can't continue. But
Given that he is the one man writer and
yeah,
performer, and
yeah.
and occasionally insists on singing. I mean, people have
Oh,
never tried
don't.
talking him out of that.
Yes, no. His sister and mother also try and talk him out of that all the time as well. But
Listen, I can recommend the John Finnemore souvenir program. If you haven't heard it, I don't know where you've been for the last 20 years.
yeah, it's
Crushed. I noticed Crushed won a health and wellness award. Now you were saying
it did.
you were
And
saying
what?
that it wasn't therapy, but
No, and the other thing was, I didn't know we'd entered into that category when we won it, and my producer also didn't remember entering us into that category. So the fact that it then won was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it is. I mean, listen, a lot of it's surprising how much people end up saying, "God, this is like therapy," during it. But it is. It's more fun than that. And also, as I say, somebody I interviewed, she said at one point, "You said there'd be no judgment." And I said, "I absolutely didn't say there'd be no judgment." I would not have said that. You're insane. I say you're insane a lot, but I'm always equally insane. This is what I always say is, whatever you've done, I've done worse. So we're fine.
in a lot of ways, comedy is like therapy. I think a lot of stand-ups feel that. The opportunity to be listened to for up to an hour
Yeah.
and get paid for it is just a
Captive
win-win.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I always found that for that period that I was on stage, for however long I was on stage for, that was the only time I had any control over my life at all. And that's what it boils down to, that
You're so right.
But finally in control of what's in
Yeah.
front of you. You can't really afford to be distracted, so there's no outside voices necessarily. It's
Yeah.
just what's in front of you. And it's a very restful, calming environment.
Sometimes. Except when people are chucking stuff at you.
Yeah, exactly that.
Well, I have asked everyone on the panel to bring a panel to the panel. You can see these images on the show page and on the artwork for the podcast image. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, well, then watch it. The pictures will be coming up in just a moment. But don't worry if you can't see the pictures, because we're going to describe them. And we're going to begin, I think, with Margaret's image. Right, listener at home, I've told you where you can find this, but you shouldn't need to, because Ian, before you have a guess at where it's from, can you describe what we're looking at?
Not easily. It's what looks like he looks like a little boy, but he's tucking in a duck and a man into a bath. And I think it's a little boy, but it also looks like he's got whiskers. And he's saying, "Night duck. I have now moved in with a duck. It is not ideal."
This is the moment where I love the notion of people who can't see the pictures, because the picture, Ian, that you just conjured up in my mind was a very, very different picture from what we're looking at. When I'm looking at
really?
this, and I'll describe this for the benefit as well of people who study technique and how these things are put together. This is a black and white outline line drawing from, I would say, the days before Photoshop and mechanical colouring, and there's no colouring in it at all. It is an outline drawing of a very small child, supposed to be aged, I don't know, 4 or 5, who is tucking into a bed, although it's a toy bath, a rubber duck, and I would say an action man. I'd say an action man because they've got what looks like a detachable neck and what look like detachable arms. And on the floor beside them is a little block with letters on, like kids have if it's a Victorian nursery. And
I had them.
I think I did too. But then I quite possibly did have a Victorian nursery. Now, Ian, would you have the remotest stab in the dark at where this might be from?
Well, it feels quite surreal. So I'm kind of thinking that it's an adult. It's an adult writing for adults. I don't know. It's my knowledge of any of this is very, very poor. So I would say that it's an American magazine. James Thurber. I don't know where that name comes from.
That's a lovely guess. I'm pretty sure that I recognise the artist, but having dug onto my bookshelves and pulled out my books by this writer and artist, I couldn't find this particular strip inside them. And I'm not entirely sure whether either I didn't look hard enough or it comes from another book or I've guessed wrong. But my guess was going to be that this is Posy Simmonds. Margaret, what is it?
It is Posy Simmonds, correct.
Hey,
and what book is it from?
You see, it's from my omnibus, but I think it might be from one of the ones you held up, and you just have.
I held up a book called Pure Posy, a book called Pick of Posy, and a book called Very Posy. There's a 4th volume called Mustn't Grumble, and there's a book before it called Mrs. Weber's Diary or Mrs. Weber's Diary. I was never sure how to pronounce it. It might be in one of those two.
Yes, I can't. I can't remember which. I won't look for it now because it's just a massive omnibus. But it's definitely in one of yours, I think. It's interesting you saying it's surreal, Ian, because in context, I don't think. I mean, I suppose it is surreal. So the image is of you talk about Mrs. Weber. It's her son Benji,
right?
And the story is incredible work, Kev. It is an action man, which I would not have identified from that picture. It's an action man, and the story is it's an action man writing to an agony aunt and saying that he was bought at Christmas and paired up with what was basically a Barbie doll, and his life was amazing for a while, but she started to let herself go and had a lot of silly putty in her hair, and then she started to wear his clothes and fire his guns, and he was basically discarded, and now he's with the smallest child who has put him with a duck in a bath. With a flannel for a blanket. And the reason I love this panel, my family always use, anytime anything goes terribly wrong, we say, I have now moved in with a duck. It is not ideal.
Beautiful. It's Toy Story before Toy Story.
Yes, it really is. It's such a clever strip. And I absolutely love Posy Simmonds. Grew up with her. And I just think she's so clever and funny and
Ian, did you ever encounter Posy Simmonds? Were you a Guardian reader?
Well, I was just going to say, she had a strip in the Guardian, didn't she? And that was I know the name from there, but I don't know anything more than that, really. But I mean, what a great story! What a fantastic idea!
For the benefit of the listener or viewer at home, I'm holding up to the camera the big pages from the books as they appear in print here. I think they may have appeared ever slightly larger in the paper, but essentially, because the Guardian back in those days wasn't a tabloid, it wasn't a Berliner that it became for a while. It was a broadsheet
Broadsheet,
paper.
yeah.
So this might have been a quarter of a broadsheet page. I
Yeah.
can't remember, but
It's
you're looking at
huge, isn't it?
you get about
Compared to what you
15
get.
panels on there, aren't you?
Yeah. Compared to Garfield or Peanuts or whatever, they gave her a lot of space, didn't they?
And was Posey Simmons the writer and artist in this then? So
Yeah.
everything is her own. That's fantastic work, isn't it?
She'd
Yeah.
started by doing a strip in, of all places, The Sun, which was a funny strip about a bear. I think that might have been a single panel strip. To my memory, I think it's called Bear, but I'm not sure. And then The Guardian gave her the chance to do these more slice of life things. And they are, I mean, it wouldn't be unfair to call them unremittingly middle class,
Oh,
would it?
yeah. Yes. But I would say very much in a way of poking fun at the middle class, you know, it's proper satire. There's no kind of, oh, you know, it's cozy, but it's very much attacking the cozy as well, I would say.
I think middle class should be unremittingly anyway. You can't do middle class without being unremittingly about it.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting what we mean by middle class, because when I was growing up, I thought we were middle class. But it was when I went to art college and met kids from posh school, and then I would read The Guardian, see the stuff that Posey Simmons would cover in that strip, which included people who had second homes, people who worked in advertising and publishing in the city, because her family and her husband's a university lecturer in the strip, and I don't know if she fictionalizes herself as Mrs. Webber, but obviously she's working for a national newspaper. So they're in a certain sector of society that did a lot of things that my sector of society didn't do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit
middle
like
class is very broad though, isn't it? So, and also it's very regional as well. What's middle class where I was born in Blackburn isn't necessarily middle class in Guildford. You know, so I think it changes.
definitely.
I remember her having one strip where she's having a conversation with the dentist and then getting this real cultural cringe about the privileges they have, one of which was having a second car. So in the early 1980s, which is when the heyday of these strips is,
Yeah.
a second car was a rarity. And if you were a Guardian reader, guilt associated.
Massive guilt, as it should be. Again,
Yes.
as it should be. I've
Yeah.
been reading The Guardian for decades and it feeds my guilt. I need
Absolutely.
that
I mean, I'm a
guilt
Catholic
hammer.
as well, so you
Oh.
know, double guilt at least.
Yeah, no, there's no escape there, is there? Because there's a lot of things that the Guardian parodies, but also indulges in. I mean, I always used to. We now only read it online, so we don't get the magazine and all the pull-out sections that you used to get. But they would have pages and pages of stuff for houses that were so fashion conscious and style conscious and aware of their own difference. I don't know.
Do you
Maybe
think it's
I'm just a
still like
slob.
that though? I don't know if it's still like. I don't know if it's kind of, because I have this theory about the British being able to laugh at themselves anyway, about the English more than the British, because I think the English always had this trait that they could laugh at themselves. But I think that in the last 10 years that's kind of gone. Nobody can take a joke anymore. But I think that the Guardian now, in a sense, if you've been reading the Guardian for a long time, like since the late 80s, which is me, it's now got to the point where you think, does it know that it sounds like this? Do these columnists sitting under these bylines actually know just how ridiculous some of this stuff is? You know, is this like an A-level parody, or are they really serious?
Yeah.
I'm finding it very difficult at times to differentiate between the two. I really do.
Yeah, definitely.
There is a time when I see the name of the person who's written the opinion piece, and I just know the opinion piece that is coming. I mean, Owen Jones is going to occasionally entertain me, but never, I think, going to surprise me with his angle.
No. Well, I think Adrian Charles is going to surprise you with his angle, but that's about as far as it's going to go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder why he's in there, but I've just remembered, isn't he married to the editor?
Yes. To be fair to him, it's like almost since it was pointed out by many people that what are you talking about, Adrian? What is this about? That they seem to, rather than asked him to sort of raise the bar a little bit. They've employed a lot more columnists who are just as banal. So it's kind of hidden. You've kind of hidden the tree in amongst the woods now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is the weird thing is that Adrian Charles is actually really, really popular. Like he's genuinely one of those people that people are buying the newspaper for, even if his columns are about wooden spoons and urinals. You know, that's but if that's what people want. I think the Guardian is doing that thing of going, I don't know, what do people want? And are just chucking stuff at us and sort of going, right, you know, so it's sort of clickbaity and whatever.
Well, one of the things they did used to want was the comic strips, and those have been pared back a bit. Posy Simmonds used to do those, I think, once a week. It may even have been twice a week. It certainly was a regular strip, and then that stopped happening by the 90s or the 2000s. And then Tamara Drew, her graphic novel, was serialized in The Guardian, but not written as a strip, because there's a sort of a feeling of a strip in the newspaper being kind of throwaway and ephemeral. But now you look at them and they're a real recorder of the times.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's happening now.
There was one called Doonesbury. Was that in The Guardian?
It was in The Guardian, and I never understood it at all. No, I never, I would baffling.
It was so American. And I just, every day I'd read it when I had The Guardian and go, I still no idea what this is.
If it wasn't for the fact that it's in another room on another floor, I would go and get you my 50th anniversary Doonesbury collection, which is a massive book. It was going for 50 quid and I got it for 25 quid. It's got this collection going right back to when they started. He started as a student in 1972, and I got some at the turn of the 1981, I think it was, a first collection, and it was the time that we'd been writing about the Carter administration, and then you're going into the Reagan administration, and I was just learning about politics for the first time, and it kind of explained it and America to me.
This is the interesting thing, right? So I'm exactly the same as Ian. I used to feel genuinely irritated. I would read it and I think, I don't know what you're talking about. This feels like a personal affront to me. But my now husband, who I met in Edinburgh with Kev, he loved it. And I think he had a similar thing. He was like, no, I've been following it for so long. He was almost like, you've missed the boat though. You're not going to catch up now, which I do think is, sort of annoying and pointless. Although having said that, I loved Tamara Drew and I, followed it religiously. It's probably an attention span thing, but it's an interesting, and my kids, do you know, Stephen Lewis, is it? No. Who's the cartoonist who does the Guardian?
It used to be Steve Bell, and it's now...
He's an incredible artist.
Martin Rosen.
No, he does the Saturday.
Yes, the football...
Stephen someone. No, not football.
Oh, right. The guy who does the football cartoons is a friend of the podcast because he was selected for a recent episode by comedian Paul Savage.
David Hedges, is it?
David Hedges, yes, was
Stephen
selected.
Collins.
Stephen Collins.
Collins. Who my kids both love, and they will say to me, Saturday's the only day that we still get the paper Guardian, and my kids, and I feel so middle class, I feel so like my Posy Simmonds loving child self, where they say, have you seen the Stephen Collins today? And sometimes they'll be like, I didn't understand the Stephen Collins today, and I'll have to sort of explain who Michael Gove is or whatever.
The Stephen Collins strip is a really good example of the modern strip that clips and can be shared, and so it stands alone. What happened with the Posy Simmonds cartoons, and also with Doonesbury, is they were a bit of a soap opera. So you got to know those characters. So when Mrs. Webber and her husband and her daughter and the people at their work, there was a guy called Stanhope Ford.
Yes, the rogue. Yeah,
exactly. Very much like Jilly Cooper's rivals characters.
Yes, so Jilly Cooper. Yeah.
And when they would recur, you knew where they were coming from, like soap opera and sitcom characters. And so you had a head start on the gag. If you didn't, you were coming in cold. Doonesbury was very much like that. The characters who start appearing from 1972 are the characters who, and Doonesbury does still continue, they are still in it.
I mean, no offence and all of that, but I must have read it for about 12 years. So
you were still too late, Ian. You were too late.
It didn't at any point say, sorry, mate, if you can go up to the Collindale Archive Library and get a copy of 1972 Guardian, you might have some idea what's going on. If I'd known, I wouldn't have wasted so much of my coffee break time. trying to get with
Get
it.
your head around it. Well, Charlie Brooker used to say, didn't he, that there should be a kind of catching up bit of the news, where they sort of say just to explain what's
But
happening in
do you
the
know what?
Middle East.
It's funny you say that because I'm thinking of sitting in the canteen at the Polytechnic of Central London, which is where I first met Charlie because we did the same course. So I
Oh,
would have been
wow.
sitting there next to him, going, "What the hell is this all about?" And Charlie would have been off in his own world and looking at other comic strips. So it was, that's come out of
Did
this.
I mention that overlapping Venn diagram, which brings us all together? Charlie Brooker and I started together in Oink comic. He used to have comic
Wow.
strips at the same
Wow.
time as me. The last time I saw him in person was when we did a thing called The World's Longest Comic Strip. It's collected now in a book called The Worm, and it was an attempt at the Guinness Book of Records. And Charlie was sat next to me drawing his panels while I was drawing my panels at the
Fantastic.
Trocadero in Piccadilly Circus.
Mate, that dates it quite
It
specifically.
does.
Yeah.
Well, we've just been looking at and inspired by Posy Simmons from her characters of the Weber family, from Mrs. Weber's diary in The Guardian from the 1980s and 1990s. Now, let's have a look at what Ian has brought in.
I'm nervous about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listener at home, you'll see it in all the usual places as described earlier, but you shouldn't need to because Margaret is going to. You can have your work cut out. Margaret's going to describe what she's looking at.
Okay. Oh my God, I'm going to do this so badly. Right. This is much more modern than the Posy Simmons. I think, is this drawn by a computer? It is quite, it's a number of, I'm going to look at these people closely. A number of mainly men. Oh God, one of them's shouting "Lel." This is like Kev will be like, for God's sake, why can't you do this? They're all on weird sort of, I'm going to say space agey motorbikes. It's so far from my wheelhouse. It's hilarious. They all look like street toughs, let's say. And they might even be hovering. They might not even be on a road.
Oh,
But
that's fantastic.
there's a weird kind of what are those bikes with the drop handles? Is that no, they're not called
Chopper.
drop handles. Yeah. They're those. So in a way, not that modern. Or I don't know whether it's it's a kind of retro thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite intimidating, is what I would say. It's not at all cozy. The headlights are streaming at me.
To add my
Black and
description
white.
to it, and yeah, to get a little bit more technical, it looks
Yeah.
like line drawing, and it looks like it's coloured with ink and wash, but I'm pretty sure it's not because I happen to know the artist, and I know that this artist moved from working with pen and ink on paper to working almost entirely digital, probably 20 years ago. But it looks like this artist's work had always looked when they were working in good old-fashioned pen and ink. It's done in black and white, but not because they couldn't afford to do it in colour. I think it's very much an artistic choice. We're looking at people riding mopeds and people riding motorbikes, but the motorbikes don't have wheels, they're floating. One of the guys in a leather jacket, you'd call them rockers, I would have thought, is swinging a chain aggressively in the direction of one of the guys in a high-collared coat. You might call him a mod. He's got a sort of like a pork pie hat, but a bit more futuristic. I think we're looking at futuristic mods and rockers of some sort. Margaret, would you like to guess what comic or where this could have come from?
No, I
I
wouldn't.
apologise, Margaret.
No, listen, I knew this was going to happen. This was Posy Simmons is almost where my knowledge begins and ends. So I'm not going to feel shame about not knowing. I'm really, really interested in it. And it does remind me of Jamie McKelvey, who is a friend of mine and a comic book artist.
Yes.
But I don't, beyond that, and it's probably not him, but I would say it's a modern dystopian.
Well, it is an artist who works in a similar genre to Jamie McKelvey. And I'll confess, it's a book that until I looked it up, I'd forgotten the title of. It's not one I've read myself. But Ian, can you tell us what it is we're looking at?
Talk to us.
It is a panel from the book The Originals by Dave Gibbons, who is more famous, I guess, for Watchmen. And I only know that because I've got the book and it says
in front of you.
he's literally more famous for Watchmen. I bought this book when I first went back to being a mod, say 25 years ago. I went back to being a mod because I had no structure in my life at all, and I needed some kind of rules or whatever. But typically, as I kind of manically do, I have to own everything that I then get involved in. And I bought this, I found it online and I bought it. I have absolutely zero interest in comic books or comic strips. It's just that it was a mod ephemera, if you like.
Really?
And
Now, being a mod is fascinating. Quite what a mod entails. I mean, Margaret, what do you think a mod is?
What I think a mod is somebody who goes down to the seafront and beats the hell out of some rockers. That's what you do, isn't it?
So that's
no, I know.
Unfair.
I'm kidding.
I haven't done that for
totally
a fortnight. That's really unfair.
It is. It's an interesting thought that you did that in this century, though, because I do very much associate it. It's originally in the 60s.
Of course, yeah.
It's the Who. It's the Small Faces. It's very much fashion and music.
It is.
And there was a big revival when I was a teenager, because I was a teenager when the film Quadrophenia came about, which was the time of the two-tone revival. So 1979 was the mod revival. 1980, that mod revival was again over.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I was too young for that, but I had mates at school. So we're talking 82, 83, and they had older brothers who were in the mod revival. So they handed their hand-me-downs to these younger kids who then sort of, the three of us did our own mod revival, but I had no older brother, so I had absolutely no mod clothing whatsoever. But it's the philosophy of going back to it when I needed those kind of rules in life, the attention to detail, straight lines, nothing messy, everything's kind of over controlled, if you like.
Yeah. So
that's what I went
is it the aesthetic?
Very much the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's not a lifestyle thing.
It's almost everything. It is sort of a lifestyle thing, but it's very difficult. I came up with my own definition for mod a few years ago because I got asked quite a bit what it was, and I think that what it is that we're sort of macro tolerant, micro intolerant. So if you are Black, Muslim, trans, whatever you are, I absolutely not judge you on that. That is entirely your freedom. But if you're wearing, say, a leather jacket with the sleeves rolled up, we are not going to get on.
I love this. This is so good.
It's that kind of thing that we have certain standards which you can't cross, and I live by those standards of dress, of work ethic, of tolerance, if you like.
I hadn't realised it spilled so much over into the work ethic. The music, I understand. The fashion, I understand. And I guess you must have a moped?
No, I never had. My wife won't let me have one. That's how rebellious I am in my youth culture following.
No, I love it.
But the work ethic.
I'm not mechanically minded at all. Work ethic, it's attention to detail. And always doing your best, never letting that go. You never, say, oh, that'll do. And think, well, I've just got to that point, that'll do. It's just not part of what I am. Whether that's a wider mod thing, I like to think it is.
Where's this handbook of mod learnt from?
There are literally handbooks of mod. I've got two of them. But it's from reading around the subject, and it's also from where it came from, which is like originally before. I mean, the death of mod in the 60s was when it all kicked off on the beaches with the rockers and all of that, because it grew up in the jazz clubs of Soho, is actually where it started, and then became a white working class thing because they wanted the suits and they wanted not to be anti-establishment, but be recognized by the establishment, which was a different thing, which is why they wore these kind of mirrored suits, but with a smarter style.
Yeah, because I recognise the start of it as being the modernists, and so they're looking at from a 1950s point of view, a very forward-looking fashion, and looking at the work of designers. Mary Quant would be a mod designer, would she?
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, it's always very difficult because the lines in the 60s are blurred. because you look back and you go, well, that must be mod. Well, it's not necessarily, because it wasn't created for mods, if you like. It's like The Who weren't real proper mods. Their first manager was a guy called Pete Meaden, who was a mod, a face, as they called them. And he, like I say, he was their manager, and he said, look, this is the way it's going, dress like this for the next few years and we can get this following behind us. And that's how they became mod. Small Faces were genuinely original kids from the East End who were mod.
Right. So Peter Townsend co-opts the modernist movement and very much writes it into Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that taken seriously as a mod text? Because I think the originals reflects that same take, doesn't it?
Well, it is that, and this is why I find the originals by Dave Gibbons, who's more famous for Watchmen. This is why I find it such a depressing little book. It's described as retro-futuristic, which is basically just putting a black and white picture of what looks like Manchester in the 30s and having mods and rockers on hover bikes rather than just wheels. But in the end, they're essentially, whenever this is in the future, they're essentially wearing the same clothes and still having the same fights. It's such an intensely depressing little vignette of what mods and rockers are. I find it incredibly annoying.
I believe it's the case, though, that Dave is writing that not autobiographically, but drawing on his own background, because he was a 60s mod.
Yes, I mean, I can understand that. But a lot of purist mods would say that those people going down to Margate and Brighton and having a tear up with the rockers weren't mods. They'd lost their most aesthetic already, because they, you wanted to dress smart, you wanted to do this, but that's not how you carried on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's stuff that's done in the name of it, which is, I mean, to be honest, it's similar with religion, isn't it? It's a kind of, hold on, the ethos of this is literally that you're not killing each other and and torturing and whatever. How has that become?
Besides which, I can't remember when this came out, probably about 20 years ago, and I think even the most ardent rocker would admit that they lost. So it's we won. The mods are still here. And,
now that's a very interesting contention, because what happens with fashion, in the same way it happens with the religions, is that they diverge and that you end up with multiple groups, don't you? Because with the mods of the 1960s, essentially they grew out, the hair grew out, and so the Beatles start dressing in Nehru jackets, which I would think were mod.
Well, it became a more dandy style rather than the sort of austere earlier 60s style. Yeah.
So by the end of the 60s, you're not seeing people dressing as mods. The people who were mods, like David Bowie, appears on TV as a mod, doesn't he? Talking about having long hair.
As did Mark Bolan. Mark Bolan was one of the original mods, which comedian Steve Jameson knew Mark King well. But that's a fashion of the time,
Can I ask about the mod scene in the Loire Valley?
yeah, you're looking at him.
Because that's another
let's move on.
Another thing was the international aspect of it, because the mods were looking in a large part to Europe, particularly to Italy. Italy was where the bikes came from. Italy and France were primarily where the fashion came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And the music came from America, the black music, black soul music, which was a lot of, the Small Faces kind of white soul, white working class male soul. But a lot of the music played in clubs was soul brought over from America. Less so Motown, because Motown was kind of white black soul, as it was called. But more bluesy type of soul was definitely, the whole thing about mods is that they cherry pick from different cultures and countries and take out what suited their aesthetic.
No, it's funny talking to you, and now that I know all of this stuff about you and the mods, but I'm going to take away that the punch bag in your background is something to do with mods as well. I know it's not even your room, but I feel like I'm going to have that association just because I've had this conversation while looking at it.
That is a rocker. There's a rocker inside that punch bag.
You should dress it as a rocker.
Mods also, the visual aspect bleeds over into film an awful lot. I think they lend themselves to the film simply because they're stylish. A designer will much more want to work with modernist design, modernist vehicles and machinery, and there's a whole aesthetic. In fact, a lot of retro aesthetic is perversely modern, because modern is now a
Yeah.
historical thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what I do like about the drawings in this book is that it's almost, apart from the violence and stuff like that, the shadows. I don't mean the group. I don't think the shadows are in it. I mean the shadows from the drawings. It's very film noir, which I really like.
Well, the panel itself is really atmospheric.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's just, I find it, like I say, just a little bit slightly. I find Quadrophenia depressing in the same way, though. And I hosted at the Apollo. I can't remember which anniversary of Quadrophenia it was, but I hosted this thing where they were doing they'd show the film, and the Apollo was full. They'd show the film, and then I'd come on stage, and the cast and the director would come on stage with me, and I'd interview the cast and director. And at the start of the night, I was supposed to go on and introduce to the audience to what was going on, and then as part of it, there'd be this little sort of pantomime where a policeman would come on and tell me, "Maud, you clear off here," and all of that.
Oh no!
Business. And they hadn't explained to the audience that this was just a pantomime. This wasn't a real policeman coming onto the stage to tell me to clear off. And so they all go, "Oi, copper, why don't you?" And it was all, again, slightly depressing.
Yeah, that's a dreadful caricature, which it's hard to imagine you dare do with any other musical movement, is there?
No, exactly. No.
Well, we have been looking at and inspired by a couple of cracking bits of artwork today. We've been looking at, and I think slagging off, Dave Gibbons is the original.
Nothing against Dave Gibbons, can I just say that?
No, Dave Gibbons,
I've not been slagging off.
Of course, we all know is more famous for Watchmen.
Yeah.
His originals is still available, and I would recommend. And we've been looking at Posey Simmons, Mrs. Webber's Diary, and other books.
Get them all; they're all amazing.
They are fantastic. Where do we find you guys on the socials these days, Margaret?
I'm on Instagram and Substack. That's my podcast, which is Crushed by Margaret Cabourn Smith, or Crushed by MCS at Substack or Instagram.
And I can recommend Crushed, with an incredible archive of over 100 episodes with the most stellar names, revealing
Revealing terrible things. The thing that mainly happens is people go red on our Zoom conversations, which I always enjoy.
And Ian, where do we find you apart from Waterstones?
Yeah, I'm on all the socials. I've just had a new book came out last week called Death and Deja Vu, which is my homage to the films of Agatha Christie. And yeah, that came out. It's in all good bookshops. If you are buying books, please try and go to the high street, because booksellers are wonderful.
Oh, bookshop.org. Do you know about bookshop.org?
Yeah,
go to that, and that's a way of getting them online, but supporting independent
independent bookshops. Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful organisation, and like I say, I'm on all the socials, and probably far too much.
And listener, I can be found at the website and on the links from this podcast as well. Well, you've been listening to Comic Cuts, the panel show. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a review if you can, and check out the archive of previous episodes. Stick around for the trailer at the end. Let me thank one more time Margaret Cabourn Smith and Ian Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us, so the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts.